So this time we're going to go over workflow, pre-composing, and nesting, and the importance of keeping your files and folders organized, mostly with working with other people, why to pre-compose, and it's very similar to Smart Objects in Photoshop. And we're going to go over the replace footage function, which is like the best cheat I've found yet. So first we're going to go over this folder structure. This is something that I developed at the place that I'm currently working. I got everybody using it because in the end, if we start to swap files back and forth or work on different parts of the project, this is the kind of folder structure we use, and all of our files will link to each other. And it comes in very handy with working with multiple people. But we're going to be working in this pre-composing nesting workflow. If I double click it, it looks a little different. I keep my After Effects and Premiere files or Final Cut files just right out here. This is After Effects, so it sits out here. And if it links to anything, it would be linking into the footage. And if I had a Premiere file, it could link to the same folder. And that kind of thing. It's pretty cool. If I start to have multiple versions of these, like a version 1, version 2, or just some kind of offshoot, usually there is just one that we will keep with all these other versions that are then old. I would select them and copy them to archive. So it's like a backup. And deliverable. The deliverable folder is what you give to the client. You can name stuff like the year first, then the month, and then the day. Today's the 4th for me. But if you have several of these folders, you would at least see them in order. So it's the year, the month, and the date, and it would just automatically be ordered in the proper order for you. So if we go to deliver something, we put it in this folder. Don't ever put final. Most people put final, but then you have a final, and it just gets ridiculous. Just put the date, because there will always be changes. Footage, that's where we put all of our images. If we actually shot footage, you'd probably put a folder name of like the shoot date and that kind of thing. Here I've got 2 folders, one with audio, whenever you have voiceover work or an actual song. And you can break that into whatever folders you want, like a draft or the forbidden final, that kind of thing. I usually put a backup and leave whatever I'm using out in the open. Very similar to this. Whatever I'm using, put everything and hide it away if it's versions. So inside the footage, we have this rendered sequences. I don't think we'll be getting into this this time. But if you have to render something out, like if it gets too big and you need to render it out to a movie, say like one scene, not the whole video, but just one scene. That's what I call rendered sequences, a sequence out of After Effects, and I would put it in here. And for example, you'd have like a scene 1, scene 2, scene 3. That would all go under rendered sequences, under footage. And here I've got some images, some stuff we worked with before, some new, and I put that into footage. Now if you're a folder freak, you might want to make a folder and put it all in there. If you name it accordingly, like all characters have a character underscore, or whatever, you know, cracker underscore, they group together with being alphabetical. So that's one way you can do it. If you work with the 3D program, we use Maya. It could be Cinema 4D, it could be 3D Studio Max. You put a folder in there for that. And if you look in here, you render out from Maya or any of those programs into a place, a directory. And sometimes those aren't final yet. And we don't want to link After Effects to those not approved images. So even if they're rough, we copy them and put them into footage 3D and whatever scene it is. And it's a way to keep it like the 3D guys can continue to work and they won't mess up our footage because it's separate. So it's kind of redundant, and that's kind of a good thing when you're doing backups. So we have our version, and then you pull in whatever the latest version will be later. And we got resources. Resources are things like notes. Sometimes you get different notes from different people, your boss, other people, maybe notes to yourself, like a checklist of stuff to do. Put them in there. Brainstorm, like usually you have to come up with ideas, and those can be concepts, and storyboard is kind of similar. But brainstorm, I found that I needed this folder when it's not quite ready for these two. They're not approved. It's like everybody's trying to pitch their idea, but it's not ready to go to the client. So I'll put them in brainstorm, and it's usually everybody's ideas. And usually those ideas come into one, and we have a concept, and then once we get that approved concept, it goes to storyboard, and that's this folder. And when you're going through projects, you need fonts, and I suggest that we download those fonts and you copy them here, so whenever you back up the project and like a year later, you might not have the fonts, but you got them per project backed up, and that's a pretty good habit. And if you get anything from the client, for this example, it's like stuff from me. I'm your client. Put everything in from client. And I got some stuff in there. It's kind of the same stuff that I was using before. I just put it in there. That's where you found images such as this. So anything I give you would be in here. And it wouldn't hurt if in the future, when you do have a client, make a date folder. So anything you received on this date, put it in there, because they might send you several stuff, and that gives you a record of when they sent it and what you got during when or whenever they sent it. You have the date, because they might say that they sent it this time. You can go check, and it was not. Most projects have scripts. I'd put it in there. There'd probably be several versions of scripts, and I always do a V01, V02. You can see that come up, and then storyboard, same thing. But that's what these folders are for, and this is what we use. And then if everybody copies down this whole folder to their desktop, because we work off of a server, so this thing would actually be living on a server, and we would all have a copy on our local computer. And if people are working on it, one person is in this main comp, this main After Effects or main Premiere, and if you need stuff like titles, lower thirds, any kind of like transitions, that's what we go into supporting comps. And I have a supporting comp in here, very similar to our After Effects comp. And that's one way to think about it is other people helping you. They're going to put their stuff in here, and it won't be confused and have a big list of stuff out here. So this is like your main working edit, and this is all these little supporting files. Since you're kind of working alone on stuff, this is more replicated in a reflection of what's in your program or within your file. And when you're getting used to this, and everybody copies this down, sometimes it can get big. You're just copying over this After Effects file in the end, which is only 753K, or 1000, like a meg. So it's a really small file, and that's the only thing we're swapping in the end, unless we do some updates with images and everybody has to copy over an image. So that's definitely a benefit. Okay, so let's open up our file. So we're in Precomposing Nesting Workflow. We're going to open up our file here. notice that we have some missing files. I did copy it over from other stuff, and you just got to relink, and this is one way to get to know that folder structure. And so we're going to have to find these files. So I'm going to go into footage and find out which one's missing, or you can come up here and type in missing, and it gives us what's missing here. And you can see where it's going, but I could look at this name here and check it out. I'm not looking at the first name, I'm looking at after this / obstacle course. So I'm going to right click. You have these different options. Reload footage is like a refresh. If we reload it, it's not pointing anywhere, so it won't really refresh. Replace footage, and this is what we want. We want to replace the footage with a file. Control H. Now what are we looking for? Obstacle course. It says it up here. Obstacle course. And we have obstacle course in our footage. So I'm going to back up so we can see where it is. This is the top of the folder. And we see footage. That's fairly familiar with this. So you go into that and you look for obstacle course and you click import. And After Effects is very smart, because if you stick to a directory that makes sense, it'll find these other images, because those images are in here too. So that's good. So that's how hard it is to find images in After Effects. So I'm going to save that, and I have different versions of examples that we can do. This should look very familiar. We have the cracker. Now say for example you want to have this cracker fade up and then be visible and then fade back down. And I can do this over 60 frames. So like 15 seconds, or we can use even numbers. 20 seconds, fade up, sit there, and then fade down. Now if you look, and if you remember how we set this up, this is a Luma mat that is using this black and white image. So there's two layers making up this transparency. So if I turn off the background and put on the transparency, we actually have an alpha channel going. That's why we can see the background. Now if you want to fade this up and down, you can fade it up. I'm going to just get keyframes in here right now. And I can take these last two and zero them out. So fade up and fade down. That's all good and dandy, but we still got to be careful because this is its own system. We have these two layers working together. So one good habit is pre-compose these guys so they're always working together and they will move together. So you can pre-compose this, comp, cracker, move everything in there together. And now that it is one comp, if you double click this guy, you got your cracker system together. Come back this way, and this is a safer way to do it. So they're both contained in there, and there's no way to mess up that system that's inside there. And here's another example. Let's clean this up, put that in supporting comps. So over into number 2, we got this guy. So say you want to fade this up and then fade it off. Look how many layers there are. You don't want to have to do an opacity animation on all of these layers. That's just ridiculous. And when you start finding yourself into this position, you got to step back and think, like, I think I need to pre-compose this. So that's another way to find out how you need to, or why you need to pre-compose, because you do not want to put opacities on all this stuff. So you can select all, pre-compose, comp, character, move all attributes in together, and that pre-composes it to one layer, and now you put the opacity change on it. And you can have it fade up from nothing, be visible, and fade out. So when you need to fade something out, you probably need to pre-compose, and that's like making it its own scene, but it is a pre-compose, because now, you know, none of that fade is on these layers. It's perfectly cool and perfectly fine. We don't need to do all of those steps. We pre-compose and do it once. And that is the beautiful thing about pre-composing. And it's very similar to a smart object, and I can get into that. But if you put an effect on this, like if you wanted to blur this guy, you would have to put the effect on all of these layers, which is bad. You don't want to put the effect on that many layers and have to possibly animate that effect and change all those layers. You put the effect out here on this layer. So instead of putting like a blur on here, you would put a blur out on this pre-composed layer, and it does it to everything all at once. And that's why we would animate that guy on this layer instead of all of this. And if you're familiar with Photoshop, smart objects are very similar to this. Let's see. I just so happen to have an example. So this is an object with the blur on it. I can delete the smart blur. So say we have this object. I converted it to a smart object, and that smart object works like a pre-comp. So I can go to filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and I can always change it. If it wasn't a smart object and I applied a blur, I could not go back and change it. So I can blur it to 50, and inside here is this shape. This is like opening up or double clicking your pre-comp and going into the comp itself. And I can change the shape. I can save it, come back out here, and it's updated. And I can still change the blur on this. And I can still go back in it and update it, save it, and that blur will work on it. It's in programming, it's like a node. All of these are empty nodes, so you can like replace things inside of them and it will update. So it's really, really helpful. And see, if this is its own file like a pre-comp, you can still have different layers in there and swap out anything. You have to save it for it to take effect, and you have it this. And I wanted to show you guys this video again. Hopefully it makes more sense. So this I showed you guys way earlier, but you have a source file, then you could pre-compose it, and that gives you this whole new layer, and then you can apply effects to this new layer, like a twirl or a color change or even a blur, and it does not affect the source. But since you pre-composed the source, you can always update the source and it will carry those changes through, which is really cool. So it's like a non-destructive way, and you can swap it out and it'll update, still have that effect on whatever you put within the pre-comp. So that's what we're messing with right now. So I'm going to close this. And that's kind of what's going on right here with our blur. You know, we can blur whatever we want, and we can double click it, and our guy's perfectly cool. He's not messed up. And we can always go back and change it. Now, just like this guy, we have a circle, and if we change the circle out to whatever we want, it'll totally change from this other animation, because we had the circle come in here and we had a bounce. And here's the thing, let's come in here and let's do, like we have a circle here, and notice it goes up to the safe frame. That's like my guidelines. Say I wanted a soccer ball. As long as it's very similar size and rotation, I put a rotate animator on there. It's a little off, but that adds some character. And I put my repeat script on there, my action script. It's ready with motion blur. And what I'm going to use is this replace. So if I select the layer down here and select a layer that I want here, they both have to be selected, and I can click and drag over to circle, and as I click and drag, I'm going to hold down the Alt key and then let go and look at it, and it swaps out this layer exactly, and now I've got a little soccer ball going. So I'm going to go to halfway, do a little preview. So all this animation is set up, and if we work with pre-comps, it's very easy to swap out and update our animation with whatever color, shape. That could be a 3D ball rendered really well, or it could just be whatever. So that's how easy it is to swap stuff out if you create your comps per object and that they're the same size. And with the same sizes, like say the circle is this big, whatever we replace it with is close or pretty damn close to the same size. So if you get comfortable with making your pre-comps and your objects, whatever they are, very similar, so when you want to go and swap them out, they will swap out pretty seamlessly, because the soccer ball is the same size as a circle, because we were pretty exact on the circle. And I just made this soccer ball rotate on the right, so it looks a little funny when it's like backtracking on this side. So it looks good going to the right. When the soccer ball goes to the left, it looks a little funky, like it's pilling out. And one way to solve that is to duplicate the soccer ball and make it look like it's going the other way. So you have like a soccer ball right, soccer ball left. And then you can just kind of come in here and cut out whenever it's going one way to another way. But take a look at it. So it looks a little funky. And I'm going to show you guys how to deal with that. But I'm going to do it in a different way. I'm actually going to make a version 5. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to save it. And I've got a little something for us. I'm going to pull this down. Hit save. Alright, so I'm going to select my soccer ball. And I've got these guys. Let's take a look at them. I've got some armadillos going. So I've got him rolling to the left. I've got him rolling to the right. Ooh, I forgot to change my levels on the guy to the right. Don't worry about that. That will be fixed in your file. So I got him rolling to the left, rolling to the right. See, roll L, roll R. I've got a skedaddle. Got him cruising and cruising to the right. So I'm going to show you how to replace those inside here, kind of like a Sonic the Hedgehog. Now if you like games, you could have your own character like Sonic the Hedgehog or something like that, and you set up these states, these animation loops, and then you can just plug them in. It's a really cool way to do it. Okay, I'm going to get to where I can see this soccer ball. Can put it in here. And I'm going to start with the armadillo roll right because it's going to the right. So let's drop this guy in. It's so seamless you can't really tell. So he's just rolling. Let's check it out. Poor little guy. So again, just like the soccer ball, it looks a little funky coming this way. But I'm going to show you how to adjust and cut and throw in these other states. I'm going to call these different animation states because it's kind of like a website or buttons. You got a rollover state, that kind of thing. Alright, so he's rolling to the right, which is good. Here he wouldn't roll to the right, he would be rolling to the left because he's starting to roll around this curve. So you can split the layer, and then you can replace with the roll to the left. And we can mouse over this guy. Now he's rolling left, and then he's going to hit. And I think now we can split the layer, and he's going to roll to the right again. He's going to bounce, bounce, stop. We can split this layer, and we can do his skedaddle right. Now if we had a xylophone, like some Flintstones, it'd be even better. And he's going to jump off, and he's going to tuck up right before he hits because he doesn't want to hurt himself. So that's a roll right, bounce, bounce, and he's gonna, I'm gonna split the layer. I don't have him running in the air, and then tuck up again, so I need to split it. Because he's about to cruise down the loop. And starting right here, and you just split the layer and then roll left because he's rolling right, and then when he gets to this point he needs to roll left around this loop. And you can roll left all the way down still rolling left, still rolling left, and when he gets to the top, I'm going to split the layer. We're going to have him skedaddle left, and then tuck up again and roll left. Bounce, bounce, bounce. And we're going to have him skedaddle left. And he's fallen off. So we're going to split it again and replace with the roll left. Bounce. Then we're going to split right there. Roll right. Hit. We're going to continue to roll. Pause. We're going to split. Roll left. Fall off. Hit that keyframe. Split again. We're going to roll right. And then somewhere around here, we're going to split and skedaddle right. And then when he gets to this keyframe, he needs to tuck up and roll right. Now this is very small scale. I just found some armadillo stuff because it was the closest thing. But if you planned on it and actually set up your character for it, I mean, it's pretty easy once you set up an animation and then you want to replace your comps with the new character. So that's what I was teaching you guys. It was kind of Mr. Miyagi like, wax on, wax off. Why am I doing this? Well, this is why. It's much easier to change stuff later on. And that's the goal, because everybody's going to change. Very rarely do you get to do something once. It will change and be updated. And that's where the money is if you get paid hourly. So that's a good thing. And you could do it fairly quickly without ruining your weekend. So that's what I want to see from you guys. And I can't wait.